Over the weekend, Washington, and really the entire globe, was hit with an absolute shockwave. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, a towering and frankly polarizing figure in American politics, passed away suddenly at the age of 71. This is a massive, landscape-altering breaking news event. So in today's Explainer, we're going to break down exactly what happened, the complicated legacy he left behind, and the intense political scramble that is literally unfolding in the United States Senate as we speak. Okay, let's dive right into this. The news broke late Saturday when Graham's office put out a very brief, really stunning statement. They confirmed the senator had died following a brief and sudden illness. And guys, there were absolutely zero warning signs here. I mean, he just celebrated his 71st birthday last Thursday. He was actively working and keeping up this grueling international travel schedule right up until his final hours. Which brings us to Section 1, the timeline, a rapid sequence of events. To truly grasp the shock of this moment, we really have to look at just how incredibly fast this all happened. Let's walk step by step through his final 48 hours. On Friday, Senator Graham was in a literal war zone. He was in Kyiv, Ukraine, meeting face-to-face with President Volodymyr Zelensky. And just for context, that was his 10th visit there since the Russian invasion in 2022. Fast forward to Saturday evening, he's back in the United States. Then, according to emergency dispatch audio, a 911 call comes in around 8:30 p.m. for someone experiencing chest pains at Graham's Capitol Hill home. About 25 minutes later, emergency responders are reportedly administering CPR to a man in cardiac arrest. And by Sunday morning, Washington wakes up to the news that he's gone. So what exactly happened? The D.C. Medical Examiner's Office released a preliminary finding on Sunday, reporting that Senator Graham suffered an aortic dissection. If you're not familiar, that's a tear in the inner layer of the body's main artery, and it was brought on by cardiovascular disease. Now, toxicological and microscopic tests are still pending to finalize the actual death certificate, but this preliminary report gives us a factual, very sobering look at the sudden medical emergency that claimed his life. Moving on to Section 2, a complex legacy from maverick to confidant. You know, Graham's life was completely defined by public service. We're talking 33 years in the Air Force, time in the House, and 2 decades in the Senate. And his time in the Senate, it represents this fascinating political evolution. For years, he was the quintessential bipartisan maverick. He's the guy who broke a massive deadlock over judicial nominees back in 2005, and he co-wrote that famous Gang of Eight immigration bill in 2013 with his best friend, the late Republican Senator John McCain. But then, the Trump era happened, and Graham totally transformed. Despite some early public doubts, he became one of Donald Trump's closest confidants and allies. He pushed through conservative judicial nominees. Remember that lightning-fast confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett right before the 2020 election? He essentially traded those aisle-crossing deals for regular golf games at Mar-a-Lago, realizing that in modern politics, results usually went to whoever spoke to the president last. But beyond domestic politics, his global footprint was just massive. You really can't overstate it. He was one of Congress's most hawkish, influential voices. I mean, the guy had a Capitol Police security detail just because of the threats he got over his tough stance on Iran. He was fiercely dedicated to the U.S.-Israel alliance and, as we just saw, deeply invested in Eastern Europe, constantly banging the drum for military aid to Ukraine. His absence literally leaves a colossal void in international diplomacy for the Republican Party. Next up, Section 3, Global and National Reactions. Because of that immense global footprint, reactions just poured in from everywhere, and they really highlight the duality of his relationships. Former President Donald Trump immediately ordered flags to half-staff, posting a heartfelt tribute calling Graham a true American patriot. But here's the really striking detail. Trump revealed on Sunday that he actually spoke to Graham on the phone Saturday evening, yes, just hours before his death. Trump mentioned Graham sounded a little tired after his long flight from Ukraine, but he was still working relentlessly, pushing Trump on a piece of legislation called the Save America Act. Now, in striking contrast, President Joe Biden, a Democrat who served alongside Graham for well over a decade, put out a statement highlighting their deep history. These two traveled the world together on the Foreign Relations Committee. Biden frankly admitted that they disagreed often and sometimes very loudly, but he praised Graham's deep love for public service and his profound respect for the Senate as an institution. It really shows how Graham managed to navigate both deeply partisan battles and deep personal friendships. And internationally, the shock was palpable. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who, remember, had literally just looked Graham in the eye on Friday in Kyiv, posted that he was deeply saddened. He remembered Graham as a determined leader who stood by the Ukrainian people when they needed it most. pointing out his 10 visits during the full-scale Russian invasion. And this underscores just how fiercely protective he was of American allies. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu mourned Graham as one of Israel's greatest friends. Netanyahu even shared a recent story where he told Graham that Israel was robust enough to eventually phase out U.S. military support to zero. Well, according to Netanyahu, Graham went completely ballistic. He flat out refused to accept the idea, telling him, "No way, you can't do that." That right there, that was Lindsey Graham's unyielding brand of foreign policy. That leads us right into Section 4, the Senate's succession scramble. Beyond the mourning, we all know Washington is a town of raw political math, and this event triggers an immediate succession scramble. 51, that number is absolutely everything right now. Republicans hold a 52-seat majority in the U.S. Senate, sure, but with Senator Mitch McConnell currently absent dealing with his own health situation, that majority effectively drops down to just 51 votes. They are operating on a razor-thin margin, making it incredibly difficult to move any legislation or confirm nominees. Right now, every single vote is mathematically vital. And Graham leaves behind some serious unfinished business. For months, he had been negotiating a bipartisan Russia sanctions package. In fact, just 2 days before he died, Graham and a group of senators announced they were closer than ever to moving it forward, having finally gotten a green light from Donald Trump. Now, several of his colleagues, including Democratic Senator Chris Coons, are actively pushing for the Senate to take up and pass this bill immediately in Graham's memory. So how does South Carolina actually go about filling this vacant seat? Well, it's a pretty complex, multi-step process mandated by state law. Step 1, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, who happens to be a close Trump ally, will appoint a temporary replacement to serve out the rest of Graham's current term, which ends in January 2027. But because Graham was already on the ballot for re-election this November, we immediately hit Step 2, a rapid filing period opening July 21st. And that leads to Step 3, a special Republican primary election set for August 11th to figure out who will replace Graham on the November ticket. This incredibly tight calendar heavily favors candidates who already have deep institutional support and serious name recognition. And trust me, the political maneuvering has already started. When asked about her interest in the seat, South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, a known MAGA firebrand, bluntly replied, "YOLO," adding that she'd be an idiot not to at least look at it. So the governor's temporary appointee could run in this primary, or we might be looking at an all-out free-for-all among the state's Republican heavyweights. All of this leaves us looking at a very turbulent political horizon. A titan of the Senate is gone, a crucial seat is suddenly up for grabs, and the balance of power in Washington is teetering just months before an election. So who do you think will step up to fill this massive void left by Lindsey Graham? And how do you see this sudden, tragic event altering the 2026 midterms? This is a historic, developing moment, and I really want to hear your predictions. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me on This Explainer, and we'll be sure to keep you updated as this entire succession battle unfolds.